Hi, hello, my spouse, my husband, my long distance person and partner. So today I will be giving you a presentation on sustainable implementations that we can do for our future tiny home. I know we talked about having a tiny home, getting a property out in the Midwest, starting it there, and then slowly expanding our home. And I thought that we could implement a whole bunch of sustainable practices and technologies for our home, both our tiny one, and then expand that into our larger home as we build that. So here's my presentation, Sustainable Tiny Home Design, why tiny home living and sustainable applications would be the cherry on top for moving in together, presented by me, Mira Berger. So, general sustainable house concepts. This presentation, this slide is just an overview of everything that I'm going to be going through, just broken down a little bit. So, first, sustainable additions for energy specifically will be solar photovoltaic solar panels and green algae windows with triple glaze, which I'm very excited to talk about because I think that one is very, very interesting. And then moving on to water, sustainable additions for water, we have gutters and barrels slash cisterns for rain harvesting, as well as sustainable water efficiency technology, just in general, things that we can purchase and implement and utilize, as well as other sustainability practices in general, which are recycling materials for home structure, as well as other sustainable energy and water technologies or practices. So, why solar panels? Solar PV harnesses the use of sunlight through semiconductors made of crystalline silicon that freeze electrons to form an electric current. So, harnessing the sun is a highly, highly efficient use of the resource in the sky that produces over 10,000 times the amount of energy that is annually demanded of fossil fuels in the world. And I learned this through the Solar Photovoltaics 101 video in my Food, Energy, and Water Nexus course at the U of A. Specifically, I did my research on monocrystalline panels, which are noted to have higher efficiency and lower carbon footprint compared to other panels on the market. So those solar panels are more of a triangle or a pyramid shape as the cells themselves versus the other cells on other solar panels. It is more expensive initially, so upfront it's a little more expensive. However, in the long run, that initial higher cost will be balanced out, if not surpassed, by the benefits of lowering our costs and our energy use, and therefore our carbon footprint on the world long term is also known to be a lot stronger. They, like I said, have higher efficiency, they can get more energy and take up a smaller amount of space, as well as connecting this to a lithium ion battery, which is known to have higher storage for um, the amount of space that it takes up. It takes up a smaller amount of space compared to other batteries on the market, although they do cost more upfront compared to the other batteries on the market and are more susceptible to intense temperatures, so extreme heats and colds, which means we would probably have to do more different implementation of just making sure that battery is in optimal temperatures at all times. So if it's colder, wrapping a blanket around it. If it's warmer, trying to keep it in a well shaded, environmentally controlled space in our house, hopefully. Um, but it does have a longer lifespan of 10 years typically as compared to the 3 or 5 of other batteries on the market. So that means that the cost of it initially will be outweighed in the 10 years by all the benefits that we would reap, as well as that the environment would reap from it. So I did some self-sufficient solar energy calculations for our home just to make sure we knew the parameters that we would have to fit our solar panels into or implement for being allowed to be basically completely off the grid, or for us to just reduce our energy consumption overall. So, the little background research, a 60 cell monopanel is about 18 square feet. So, that was multiplying the metrics of 3.25 feet times 5.5 feet. And that 60 cell monopanel produces anywhere from 310 to 350 watts of energy on average, according to an article done by Bolt in 2023. So, fairly recent article on monopanels in particular. Also, monopanels are a more recent development, which is absolutely amazing. Love the advancement of technology. Doing a little quick math there to convert it into kilowatts, which is what we're going to be converting all of our units into for breaking down our calculations. We divide 310 by 1000 to get 0.31 kilowatts, and divide 350 by 1000 as well to get 0.35 kilowatts. So instead of the watts, these 60 cell monopanels can produce 0.31 to 0.35 kilowatts. Then, taking the least amount of energy or average energy that this 60 cell monopanel produces, I multiply those kilowatt hours by 24 hours, or kilowatts, sorry, by 24 hours to get that number in kilowatt hours. So multiplying 0.31 kilowatts times 24 hours would give us about 7.44 kilowatt hours of energy that this 60 cell monopanel can produce on average. So, moving on from that research, the US EIA, or Energy Information Administration, reports average annual energy consumption for all households in the US in 2015 as 13,895 kilowatt hours. Although I'm sorry for it being about a decade old of information. I couldn't find any more recent information, which was a little strange, but I really did try my best to dig for that. So, what we do is we take the 13,895 kilowatt hours and we divide that by the 365 days of a year to get 38.068 kilowatt hours per day, approximately. Then, if we take that and we do 38.068 kilowatt hours divided by the amount of people in our household, which will be 2 people, we get 19.034 kilowatt hours per person per day. Then, if we take that number, 38.068 kilowatt hours, and we divide it by 24 hours, we will get 1.586 kilowatts. So turning that back into the kilowatts of energy that we would consume as a household. So moving on from that, I did a little bit more research and found in an article on the Sustainable Tiny Living website that a battery for solar panel storage, or solar energy storage, must have at least 1.5 times the amount that you consume in a day of storage space. So if we multiply the 1.586 kilowatts that we found just a moment ago by that 1.5, we get about 2.379 kilowatts of battery storage that we need from that lithium ion battery that I mentioned in the previous slide, but that should be applicable because those do have a very broad amount of storage. So finally, if we take the amount of energy that we consume in a day in kilowatts, which is 1.586 kilowatts, and we divide that by the initial amount that we found for the lowest average amount of kilowatts that a 60 cell monopanel produces, so 1.586 kilowatts divided by 0.31 kilowatts, we get 5.116, or approximately 6 60 cell panels that we would have to install and utilize to be completely self-sufficient for solar energy in our 400 square foot house. and then just multiplying those 660 cell panels by the amount of space they take up, which is about 18 square feet, we get 128 square feet of panels to cover the average kilowatt hours or kilowatts of energy used in our two-person household. So we would probably put those on the roof, take up about 128 square feet of space, and then maybe use that extra space as a means for getting water down into like in collecting that water, or possibly having a little green roof up there with plants and like a little garden. Um, Then another thing we can implement is green algae. So why green algae? Green microalgae has been used by a building in Hamburg, Germany, known as the BIQ building, and it optimizes thermal energy production and conversion while capturing CO2 from the environment, which I think is absolutely amazing. Like it checks off all the boxes pretty much on sustainability. So green microalgae is kept in a water mixture held in a thin glass window like encasing almost, that can be built over windows or within the structure of a building as a window itself. So initially for the BIQ building in Hamburg, Germany, it was a structure or a container almost that was attached to the outside of building windows. However, with recent advancement in technology as of 2022, they are now being implemented as a part of buildings, like as windows themselves instead of over it, which I think is very fascinating. Um, so the algae photosynthesizes using the sunlight that is exposed to, and through that photosynthesis process, it converts the CO2 in the environment to extra oxygen, as well as producing heat through that process. And that heat can be collected and transferred by the capsules that it's in and circulated as heat for a building or converted directly into energy itself. If nanofluids are used, nanofluids are a bit more advanced aspect of it. We don't have to use that, maybe implement it further along the line, but I think that's very fascinating. As well as the algae itself providing insulation for the building because it is absorbing that sunlight instead of the sunlight like passing straight through. Um, Furthermore, the algae produces biomass that can be sold, fed into a furnace for extra heat, or created into food products. So basically, this would help us reduce the use of heating, or energy for heating in our building, in our tiny home, as well as overall lowering costs. And could also provide great health benefits as well if we decide to turn it into healthy food supplements. So the image on the right is a visual of the building found in Hamburg, Germany. It's not the building itself; it's a sketch more like. But like the figure label number 1 shows the building structure with the windows kind of portrayed on the outside, or the algae capsules on the outside of the building instead of within the building. And then in the middle there, it's more of a close-up view of what those capsules will look like. So, moving on, what sustainable technologies or applications can we use other than those for energy consumption or reducing that consumption and lowering our costs? Just like little appliances that we can buy, install, make. So some things would be LED lighting, which reduces energy consumption by optimizing efficiency when installed. It reduces the energy use and costs overall, and I found that from an article authored by Gilmore from 2019. In addition, we can use a smart thermostat. So a smart thermostat allows for temperature regulation and adjustments based on indoor and outdoor temperatures, as well as us manually shifting it. But basically, it ensures that our temperatures aren't constantly shifting. It's held on a more constant rate, which means the AC or the heat isn't constantly kicking on and off, which ultimately contributes to less energy consumption for heating and cooling, and therefore lowers our costs for use of electricity as well in that process. In addition, just general energy efficient appliances that we can buy and implement, such as lower energy dishwashers, washers, dryers, etc., can help in reducing energy usage and costs as well. Found that in the article, The Most Energy Efficient Home Appliances of 2025. And finally, recycling garbage dump materials. So this can be a great way to remove waste from dumps while potentially being obtained through lower to no cost. For example, metal sheets can be obtained for roofing or siding to optimize our insulation because the heat will bounce off of reflective surfaces instead of being absorbed, which allows for us to not have to increase our heating or our cooling bill rather. Um, and it could also allow for proper water runoff if we use it on our roof for potential rainwater collection. And that was found in an article on tiny homes and their implementation and their creation that were built for less than $12,000. Think we should really check out that website more together. I think it's a great inspiration for us for future builds. So, moving on to water, I did calculations for our water needs using a water needs or water consumption calculator from the Southwest Florida Water Management District website. So, for I personally take 2 showers a day, 10 minutes each daily, and that consumes about 50 gallons of water. I go to the bathroom, so flush the toilet about 4 times a day, with a toilet newer than 1995, which already uses less water compared to toilets that were made before that date. That consumes about 6 gallons of water. I brush my teeth twice a day for 2 minutes and wash my hands 4 times a day for 1 minute each daily, contributing to about 18 gallons of water consumed by me as well. 11 gallons of water is consumed for dishes washed by hand for 5 minutes a day. 9 gallons is consumed for 3 loads of laundry that I do per week. 3 gallons is consumed for 3 dishwasher loads that I typically run in a week as well. And so all of that totals to about 97 gallons of water used by me personally daily, at least according to this calculator. So if we then double the amount of showers, flushes, faucet use, and laundry loads for both of us living together, so you added, it would be about 179 gallons of water that we use in our household daily. So, obtaining water sustainability based on those calculations, some things we can do is we can purchase potable water from water delivery services or water stores such as Watermill Express, and then we can have those in, like for example, if we purchase from Watermill, we can just have a giant plastic or maybe wood metal container that we just constantly bring back to the water mill to get our water. That way, we're not continuously using containers, like buying disposable plastic bottles, and instead have that one. So, consolidating our waste and doing that. And we can put that on our roof. And then, if we do that, we can use gravity as a way to supply water pressure if we are, for example, traveling across the country, if we wanted to live other places before settling down somewhere in the Midwest, or not on a property with established pumps, wells, or hookups. Although we could have a portable water pump or hookup as well, according to 5 best water supply options for mobile homes that support self-reliance, which is an article that I found on the website Habitatista, and it was created in 2025. Um, I have a picture of the Watermill Express up in the top left corner, just to give a visual. Those are found all across the US. So, although not completely self sufficient, we would still be able to obtain potable water um, while also being able to probably more visually see the amount of water that we consume in a day. Furthermore, we can harvest rainwater by having gutters and downspouts with drains for initial filtration to transfer and capture water in collapsible dark UV barrels or cisterns. Cisterns are a lot heavier material, thicker material, so that would probably be for when we decide to settle in one spot on one property, and we'd most likely have those underground instead of above ground as seen in the image to the right. Here is just a visual of how cisterns or barrels could be used for collecting rainwater. So the gutters basically have a filter kind of grate on top to get a lot of the organic, like larger organic materials such as leaves, grass, large rocks, whatever might be kicked up during a rainstorm, and then some sort of tubing to transport the rainwater into barrels. So from there, we would probably have 20-gallon or 50-gallon capacities for each barrel, totaling to about 200 gallons of water storage, which is the number that I got from the 179 gallons of water that we would consume together in a household in a day. So we'd probably have about 200 gallons of storage, of collapsible storage for water when traveling, or 400 plus underground in cisterns when settling in one location. The water collection process and filtration for tiny homes was found in that article from 2024. In addition to purifying the water, we could purify the water for potable use through installing reverse osmosis and or activated carbon filters to each water outlet, such as faucets, shower heads, etc., to ensure quality and purity of the water for our safety. So obviously we most likely wouldn't be pulling from the potable water distribution system from cities or towns. We would be a lot more self-sufficient in that way, but therefore we would have to have our own form of water treatment. And these can just be screwed on the faucets, etc., for our own implementation. From there, I have other water efficiency and sustainability technology forms. So for example, I have a composting toilet. We don't have to implement this, but I think it's really cool. It can be installed into our mobile home or outside of it. It doesn't require any water to flush because it's specifically using the compostability of waste. And we can take that waste and we can use it as a fertilizer for our home or property or rooftop garden for us to grow produce or herbs and save even more money while helping us save the environment. It saves us a grocery trip, for example. Furthermore, we instead, if you don't like the composting toilets idea, which a lot of people don't just because they think, oh, it'll smell. However, I did some research on that and turns out there are technologies and companies that create composting toilets and ensure that there is no smell, so it might be something to look into. But if you really truly don't like that idea, it doesn't settle well with you, we can instead do dual flush toilets, which I have one in my home currently, and those allow us to regulate how much water we flush. We use to flush our waste into the plumbing. So one flush would be used for fluid or two for solid. Ultimately, it uses less water in the water process and it helps us manually or more manually control how much water we consume when doing that. This was found in the article 10 Water Saving Technologies to Save in 2025 from AquaCubic. In addition, we can use low flow shower heads and faucets. So basically those are also kind of like a screw-on attachments or something that we physically install into our water appliances, and those combine air with water to ensure steady pressure or streams while using, and therefore uses less water. That was also from the same article that I just mentioned above. Furthermore, we could also implement water meters, leak detection systems, and or water flow management devices. All those are a little bit more expensive to install. However, ultimately, those will also contribute to a lot greater benefits compared to the initial costs, just because those can be used a lot more long term as long as we keep those up maintenance wise, and they will help us reduce our water bills as well as our water consumption in general, helping the environment. So overall long-term benefits for a shorter term, higher price. But these, in combination or in separate, can allow for water usage and waste regulation, or in water waste regulation, sorry, and observation, therefore reducing water consumption overall and reducing costs on our water bill. So, for example, the water meter can let us know how much water we have been using, how much water is stored. The leak detection system can let us know when there are areas that are wasting and consuming more water that we don't know about, we don't see in our plumbing. So it lets us know if something's wrong that we can fix to reduce that waste, as well as water flow management devices that just helps us more manually regulate how much water we're using for example, our showers or for our toilets or brushing our teeth, etc. So that was my presentation. Thank you for joining me today to explore energy and water sustainability options for our future tiny home of 400 square feet. I hope you enjoyed it. And here is our next slide that has all of the sources that I used, in addition to like just ones that you might want to check out for tiny home inspiration, maybe deeper dives as well. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed.